but he'll be well known to a lot of you. In his role as a local councillor, he's been an Independent Residents Association councillor for many years now. Many of you have read his comments he makes in the bulletin, which is circulated in the atmosphere very widely, and you'll know from that that he often writes about scams which are currently to be considered and avoided. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot to take us. But on a personal note, I welcome you very much indeed, Mr. Councillor, amongst your other colleagues you've got there. I know you're very busy with a certain date coming up in May, and there's a little conversation going on about committees while I'm having their lunch, and I'll be probably listening to every anyway, you're very welcome. We look forward to your.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And if I can just say that I'm going to finish this by 2:30, so because I know that's a cut-off time. But do feel that if you want to ask questions as we go along, that's absolutely fine. And there is towards the end a bit of an interactive quiz, which I'd like to get to. So we'll see how we go with that. So, Friends Against Scams. This is something that's set up by the National Trading Standards about 2 years ago, and the idea is, that's a strapline for the campaign to take a stand against scams. And so, who's who in the Friends Against Scams? So, Friends Against Scams is really everyone in this room, people that you know, and people who would be on the receiving end rather than anything else of these sort of presentations where we can convey knowledge and information about how we can avoid scams, identify scams, and pass those messages on. Scam champions, they're people who actually go around doing these sorts of talks. I think there are several hundred of them around the country. And then there's scam ambassadors, which is a bit grand, but scam ambassadors is the same sort of thing as scam champions. We go around the community with voluntary groups and so forth, and give presentations. And that's kind of aimed at councillors like Keith, like myself, like Jim, who have access to lots and lots of voluntary groups. So that's what I am, Scam Ambassador, and I've given a number of these talks to lots of voluntary groups across the area. And so why is learning about scams so important? I think that's almost a rhetorical question really, because we're going to go into this video, and if you bear with me, if you can't hit the music, can you? Or can you?
Is it? I'll put a microphone around.
Anyway, the messages are there, so if you please have a look.
Can't get on that. Where's the amplifier? Where's it coming out?
music does carry on, but I'll cut out a few slides because it was going on too long. But there are some key messages in there, and some of which I'm sure you recognise. You know, I'm willing to bet that there isn't a person in this room who hasn't been a target of a scam at any time whatsoever, and particularly with online scams. So we'll be looking at all the types of scams, and in particular the online scams, as we go through. As it picked up in the video, there's 53% of people at age 65 plus that have been targeted by scams and criminals. That's a figure from Action Forward, and I would suggest that the figure is much, much higher than that. 5 to 10 billion pounds the cost to the economy. Again, that's a pretty wide estimate, but certainly it would be something in that region, I would have thought. And anyone can be a victim of a scam, anyone at all. There is this perception that people who are victims of scams are 85 years old and live on their own and a bit vulnerable. Whilst that's true to an extent, anyone can be a victim. For example, Kevin Bacon, he was scammed, Cindy Crawford, Jack Nicholson, Sam Allardyce, funny enough, Paul Burrell, and loads of footballers. So anyone can be a victim of a scam, and only 5% of incidents ever get reported. Again, there is this feeling that if you have been a victim of a scam, there is somewhere along the line that you've been culpable, but well, actually, I feel a bit ashamed about it, so I'm not inclined to report it. And it's hugely, hugely underreported. And it's at the end of the day, it's fraud, and fraud is carried out by criminals, and very often very organised criminals, criminal gangs. They don't necessarily have to be in this country. In fact, I'm sure we've all had emails from people who are probably some the other side of the world or wherever. So if you have a look at the types of scams that we experience, so for example, there's the postal scams, which were probably more prevalent a few years ago than they are now, but nonetheless they still happen very frequently. And you can see there at the top bubble about a victim in Yorkshire who thought she had won £2.8 million. Of course, that was just a complete scam. But the most common ones, perhaps, is the lottery or prize draw scam, which is there on the bottom left. Now that is where you receive a letter saying that you've won the lottery in Southeast Australia, and it's $1 million. But for us to give you the money, we need £100 up front, and this is the bank account. Yeah, and all those details, and the whole idea is that, you know, if you haven't entered a lottery or a prize draw, you can't possibly win it really. But that's the draw. That's why they do it, and sadly, people do respond to these things, and we'll see that in a moment. The catalogue scam, that basically not so much nowadays, but that's just selling a load of rubbish by catalogue, and typically by buying so many pieces of, I don't know, wooden spoons, you'll be entitled to a cruise around the world, and so it goes on. The clairvoyant scam, that's become something that's much more prevalent now than it used to be. Sadly, there are people who get the local paper, look at the obituary columns, and figure out who's passed away, and work out how they can get in touch with the family and say, look, you know, I'm clairvoyant, I can get in touch, get a message, and so forth, preying on the very, very vulnerable. And of course they'll do it for a small fee, which of course, and if a person does do that, the small fee is for a bit of a message, and then it's a bigger fee for a bigger message. And it's a very, very cruel scam. The inheritance scam is, as you can imagine, your great auntie Phyllis in South Africa has passed away. You didn't know you were related to her, but apparently you were. She's left £1 million and we just need your bank details, and we need a fee for the administration by the solicitors in order to release this to you, and on it goes. And I'm pretty sure that nobody in this room would fall for that, but people do fall for that. Just on the prize draw, does that look familiar to anyone? Has anybody ever seen something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. They used to receive these quite frequently, and I certainly received a few. And it's made to look very dazzling, and it uses customers' first name quite often. And one of the key factors that these people use is to apply pressure on recipients, saying, for example, you've won £10,000, but you must claim within the next 5 days or 10 days, otherwise you won't get it, and that's putting that pressure on the recipient. That's really basic, isn't it? Too good to be true offers are too good to be true. I think that's a very good thing to bear in mind throughout all of this. And requests money, oh yeah, of course, yeah. With all of these, they want the money up front, like the inheritance and so forth. And it's made to look authentic with nice signatures and glossy bits and pieces. But nowadays, I suppose these come through online rather than by post. But nonetheless, there's still quite a lot of it around. This is an example of a chap in Norfolk, and his daughter-in-law contacted Trading Standards after discovering that he had paid £300,000 over 5 years in the belief he had won 1.5 million on the lottery. And it started with a typical letter saying that he'd won the lottery and he just had to send some money for the administration costs and he would receive the 1.5 million. So 5 years later, hundreds of £1,000s later, £300,000. One of the key things about this is this bit here, is that David, not his real name obviously, but was so convinced that he was going to get this money that he convinced himself and that he was in this bubble where whatever anybody said to him, he wasn't going to believe it. He said, I'm going to get that money, I'm going to do it. And as it worked out, that they managed to persuade him not to do it. But that's one of the things about it, is people actually get into this space where they totally believe that they're going to receive these goods, this prize, this money, which is really worrying. And of course, that's a tactic used by the fraudsters themselves. Telephone scams, phishing, smishing, phishing simply is a telephone call out in the blue, cold call, requesting details, your personal details, in an attempt to steal those details and use them to defraud you. Smishing is exactly the same thing, except they do it by text. Investment scam, very similar to an inheritance scam, particularly with the freedom of pension pots, which is the next one along, about, for example, again, someone gets in touch about this fantastic wine cellar in Italy or France, and that it's open to investments, and you only need to put in £1,000 or something, guaranteed 30% return, all that sort of stuff. Too good to be true is too good to be true because it's a scam. Pension scam is very similar. The computer scam, has anybody ever had a phone call from someone saying that your computer is about to be... So,
only last week, my computer is being hacked, and they are trying to take money in California. And I became suspicious, but they were so convincing that we are talking from BT, what they call it, the computer company, OpenReach.
Yes.
And this is our telephone number. And when you reach them, they say, oh yes, our guy is there, he's an expert computers and your computer is not working. I became a bit suspicious, but still I gave them some information. In fact, they had more information about my computer and my account than I have. And I became suspicious. I rang the operator telephone number which is given on the computer. They said, we don't contact all these things. When he was told you are a scam, he put the phone down. I'll ring you back in 10 o'clock tomorrow. He rings me again 10 o'clock. And when I told him you're a scam, put the phone down. Now, the BT have got a landline telephone number. If you ring them back, if somebody rings you, they can block that number for you. I will give you the number in a minute. And after 3 or 4 days, I had a letter from the HSBC that somebody is trying to attack your internet banking. Please ring us. Rang them and said somebody is trying to take out £8,500 from your account. But as there is not 8,500, so we have stopped it. Now tell us please, is it true or not? I said, no, it's a fraud. So that has been stopped. So it has been happening with me for the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's quite a story, isn't it?
Yes. And I have got the number here from the BT. It's 1572, option 1. If you ring them, whenever somebody rings you, straight away you ring them, they say, do you want this telephone to be blocked? You press 1 and the phone will be blocked and nobody will be able to ring you.
Well, that's useful, isn't it? Perhaps that's something we could put in the Green Bulletin for...
This has been only started recently by the BT. And they are very good. And they will tell you also that how many telephones you have blocked in the past.
Yeah, that's really good. And there's been a few more experiences like that, perhaps not as extensive as that one.
I have received many letters. Somebody has died and they have left so much money in the will, and your name is Dembos is such and such person. If you contact me, we'll give you the money.
Yeah.
And another important thing, somebody rings you from Spain that this telephone number, and if you ring this number back, you have one price.
Yeah.
If you ring that number back, that call could cost you hundreds of pounds because they charge you £50 per minute, £100 per minute, and they will keep on talking to you, and then you get a bill, and you can use it.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I do when I receive a phone call, and I think that's a strange number, is rather than call it back, I Google the number, and then you'll find that it comes up with this number has been subject to 1,000 complaints for fraud or scams, so just don't do it. But no, thanks for that, and we could use that.
No, I think this number will be very useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one is doorstep scams, rogue traders. Basically, they're people who are posing as legitimate callers who are basically selling a load of rubbish, and you've probably seen them, the trays of dusters and things like that. Whereas bogus callers a bit more worrying because bogus callers, for example, are quite often casing places. So might call at a bungalow, Mrs. Jones, she's 80, she lives on her own, and this guy, I'm from the council, I just need to check your pipes or something like that. Flashes some kind of ID badge which you get off the internet, and what can often happen is that person they're seeing if that person lives alone. Is there any valuables in the house that they could, usually cash or jewellery, and in other cases they're seeing to mark up the place so that it can be revisited by a gang or a colleague in the gang of the criminals to burgle it. So there's a whole heap of things about bogus callers, and checking ID properly is really, really important, and that's a message for I'm sure you guys are all kind of familiar with that for perhaps an elderly neighbour or whatever. That would be really useful. Hello? Yeah.
Just one point on that. I was on holiday last week in Barbados, and I was in our room, and my wife answered the door to two men that said there was a leak on the balcony, and she let her into the room and went out to the balcony. There was no leak anywhere. And we went down to the reception afterwards to ask what it was all about, and they didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Now, they probably see me there, and I was, a bit threatening, to be truthful, and that's probably why they,
Put the fear of God in them.
yes.
Yeah. Loads of examples like that, and it's about being vigilant and being aware and listening to your instincts, which is easier for some people than others. The next one, more familiar with, online scams, and I'm sure, absolutely positive that everyone in this room has been a target of an online scam, absolutely. The phishing is just looking, sending an email asking for your details to update something or other, which absolutely delete, get rid of. Farming, a bit more sinister. Supposing you've got an account with Amazon and you get an email from Amazon and saying you just need to update your details because we're doing a data cleanse or whatever. Click on this link. Click on the link and it will go to something that looks exactly the same as Amazon, except it's not Amazon. And then you go into the various pages, update your details, your credit card and everything, and bang, the criminals have got it. I'll come to how you can kind of best defend against that in a moment, but that is more and more common now, and very worrying, because what does happen is that the criminals and the fraudsters get more and more sophisticated as we go along, and keeping up with them is really tricky. Romance and dating scams. Yes, well, I'm sure you've seen this where there's a 26-year-old Latvia from Russia who's looking for a husband or a boyfriend in England, and strikes up an online relationship, and she says, "Oh, I'd love to come and visit you in Upminster, but I haven't got the airfare. Could you send over £300? Would you do?" And of course you're caught up in the web there. Not that I've done it, but but people do get caught up in it, and I'm sure you probably know of someone who knows of someone who has been caught up. And when I go back to about the 5% only being reported, this is a typical one which people won't report really. It's too a shame. Impersonation of UK officials is very common. Perhaps the most common one I ever see, and I'm sure you've all seen it, is that you're owed a tax refund, and it's usually sent by email saying that your tax account has been reviewed, and you are owed £231.46, and it's made to look fairly small but very precise to make it look convincing. Click on this link to get your tax rebate, and of course you put all the details in and it's in the hands of the fraudsters. Fake websites is that really. Ransomware, are you familiar with the ransomware virus? What happened, and this really is becoming a massive problem in cyber security. So for example, a few months ago, I think it was one of the NHS trusts, in a nutshell, what happens is somebody opens up an email, perhaps an invoice. This invoice is outstanding, and it goes to the finance officer, opens it up, releases a virus into the system, and what happens? That virus encrypts everything on the database, everything in the program, and so nobody can do anything. Like in the NHS one, all the patients' records were all scrambled. Nobody could do anything, and it was a real problem. And they say for us to give you the antidote, so to speak, you need to give us £10,000 in bitcoins or £5,000. There are examples elsewhere where some council, Chichester or somewhere like that, where they got in their computer and they scrambled up all the people waiting for allotments, weirdly, and they said, we want £200 to unscramble it. And all these organisations say, we don't do it, we don't pay them, but I think they probably do. So that's something that's really quite prevalent. PPI, I'm sure you're familiar with all that, and computer virus is something that we have just mentioned. So these are the sort of tricks that the hackers use, using a fake free Wi-Fi network to steal passwords when you go along, particularly up London, and you've got a whole list of free Wi-Fis that you allegedly could tap into, and I'd be very cautious about kind of releasing personal details into a free Wi-Fi system. Guessing obvious passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Guess what the most popular password is?
Password.
Password, correct.
Or 1, or 2, or 3.
Yeah. Social media stalkers. This one is really quite worrying. Facebook is great, social media is great. There's Mr. and Mrs. Turner, and on Facebook saying, we're going away to Cyprus for 2 weeks, we're going to have a great time. And of course people read it who are not necessarily their friends. I think, right, I'll work out where they live, and they come back from Cyprus and their place has been burgled. Dodgy apps, asking you, giving away data for in-app permissions. Does anybody kind of use apps a lot here? So sometimes you get an app. For example, if you want an app for a torchlight, which is quite common, and then they ask you for your personal details and access to your permissions, which is access to all your contacts list, then that's a bit of a scam, because what happens is that they'll get into your contacts list and send everybody in your contacts list an email saying that you're stranded in Paris or something and you need £100 to get back, something like that, and that's how they get into these things. And I think we mentioned that before, fake emails pretending to be from well-known brands like Amazon and eBay in particular. So, what is a safe website? So the top one, that's just a normal website which people browse in, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, unencrypted, it's just information, it's like looking at the BBC, for example. HTTPS, this is encrypted, yes. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, S means secure, actually means, it's got a security verification, and that is encrypted. So from the user to Amazon, there's an encryption in between, so that you're protected to a large extent. So for those of you who use online banking, is that many of you at all? Do you ever see the one with the green bar? So the green bar, again, it's HTTPS, yes being secure, and the green is basically an extended validation certificate, so that the steps it goes through to get a validation certificate are much more extensive than, for example, Amazon. So I suppose I'm surprised that Amazon hasn't got the green bar, but banks, by and large, certainly do. So if you see that, you can be pretty confident that that's secure. And are you familiar with the green padlocks on websites? Up the top there with the address, you'll see a padlock, and this goes back to the verification certificate I mentioned in the previous slide. If you click on that padlock, it will tell you who issued the verification certificate and where. Which is a comfort if you see one, which there is usually only a few which are really kind of out there. I think this one, the Very sign, is a very popular one. Of course, the risk here, of course, is that the fraudsters will soon, if not already, figure out that actually we can do this, and we can issue a certificate like that. But we'll come to that in a moment. So, there's a tip there that I certainly use. Anything I do for online purchases, whether it's Amazon or anything else, or TFL, I just use a completely separate debit card which is only got, I don't know, maybe £200-300 in it, depending. And so if it ever gets compromised, the most that will be lost is whatever's on that card, rather than having a card which has got thousands and thousands on it and all sorts of limits. And this going back to my example there about where the fraudsters can even get verification certificates. What it is that they can't use this address, but they can use that address. And can you tell the difference? Which is that. So the verification certificate and the S means that you are definitely visiting that website. And if they've got a verification certificate which has got that in the middle, you're definitely visiting that website, which is going to be fraudulent, and this validation certificate will be fraudulent as well. Similarly, this is a typical one, the PayPal, that's, everyone's familiar with that, I would think. PayPal, not quite. And then when it gets a bit longer, it gets even more confusing, but it can be lost in translation. So there's just an underscore there. And quite often when you look at a screen and you look at the top of this is the URL, don't take too much notice. And if you look at it quickly, you could quite easily just go into one of these. So it's about being vigilant, being aware. Lots of people ask about antivirus programs, and there's the free software, which is basically, as it would be. There's some providers. Paid for software, I'd recommend if you're going to be using your PC for purchasing stuff, to get paid for software because it's better. What I'd like to do in the last 10 minutes is just take you through some questions. This is like a quiz. Some of you may have seen this, but if you have, don't say anything. But this is something that's been launched by the government in the last few weeks. And apparently, there's 8 questions, and apparently only 9% of people ever get them all right. So, can you see the question?
Yes.
So we've got this message, and you get this text from a local bank. Would you transfer your money?
No.
No? Any yeses? So that's a no, of course. A genuine bank will never ask you to move money to a safe account, and if in doubt, get in touch with your bank. So good, it's 1 out of 1. Here's another one. Question 2. Receive this email. Any yeses?
No.
All no's? It is indeed a no. Never automatically click on a link in an unexpected email or text. And as this goes back to what I was saying a few moments ago, do check that the URL, the address at the top of it, is correct and uses that HTTPS connection. Really important. Next one. Your bank asks you to call them if you did not set up a standing order or make a new payment. Would you ring them?
Yes. Yeah.
Any no's?
If I have the correct number of the bank.
So yes.
Yes. Make sure that the number you ring is on the back of your debit or credit card, and so that you know exactly where you are reaching.
Yeah. So that's pretty good, and it is pretty good. So it is a genuine example. So and the next one. So you're doing well so far. 3 out of 3. Get this text from your bank querying a recent transaction. Will you call the number provided?
No.
Any guesses? No. The numbers listed are absolutely fraudulent. And that goes back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
Always use just your number. Next one. New radiators fitted.
No.
All no's? Any yeses?
No.
No, well done.
Jerry, you should be on the front here.
So always double check with the person you're sending money to, and especially if it's on a website. Right. Receive these texts informing you that your card has been blocked. due to recent transactions. Do you trust them?
No.
How many no's? Two? Yes.
Why?
It's a genuine example of a message that the bank might send, and there's no legitimate request. So they're going to send you a message, and there's a few layers of security there. So I think this is the one where most people get 8 out of 9. So right, your bank texts you to tell you that there's a problem with your account login. Would you call the number?
No.
No. Absolutely. Same sort of reason as the others. Always question these sort of approaches. The bank just wouldn't do that. And your bank's credit card statement is ready to view. Do you trust this message?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. That's good. So I think that was pretty good. So there's a number of you there in the 9% club, I think. So well done on that. But just approaching the last few minutes, and this is something that the strategies that the fraudsters use. Over on the left, they appear legitimate and friendly, and sometimes you hear Mrs. Jones down the road about this lovely man who knocked on my door and said he's going to fix my radiator, and it was a lovely chap. And he only wanted £650. So, always helpful, always charming. Then it can quite easily turn into being very persuasive, very persistent, threatening, and intimidating, and really making that person's life an absolute misery. The consequences of falling for scams, these are just some of them. Being a repeat victim, for example, to the extent, and it has been in the news, about people committing suicide, relationships being damaged, and of course, huge debts. So, some top tips what you can do to protect yourself and others. Never disclose security details. Don't assume everyone is genuine. Certainly don't be rushed. Listen to your instincts, because they're usually right. And the fifth one there is stay in control. That means stay in control. I don't know, what I probably meant was that I would apply for a debit card or credit card, and I would put my own limit on it.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a limit that would make the card fail. It would be just, I'm going to put £250 on it, and that's all. So it's a self-imposed limit rather than the bank imposing a limit.
Yeah, I mean, you could ask them to do that. Or is it a sort of a charge card that you put £200 into it and then draw against it?
Just a normal debit card against a separate account, totally separate, and use it only for online purchases. And that offers a degree of protection should it ever get compromised.
Yeah, I think you disappointed me slightly because the £8 million that my uncle left me in Nigeria. Just going to the cards, you're talking about cards again. My understanding is that a debit card, I hear what you say, if that's a prepaid charge card or whatever. But with credit cards, you're actually insured on.
Yes, yeah. In credit cards, you
But
are.
not debit card.
Not debit
Not
cards.
on the debit.
Yeah.
Only credit cards.
Yeah. So yeah, that advice. I mean, that's what I do. Right? A credit card, you've got that additional protection.
Yeah.
So that's an even better idea.
Next question. You know, my bank says, and even this morning I had a letter, that they will never send any messages by text, and you shouldn't respond. But here in your presentation, you told one of the texts saying that your card is blocked and everything, you say yes, you should respond. I wouldn't. I would rather ring them because I got their number.
Yeah. I mean, I do get texts from the bank, definitely. And the texts don't usually kind of ask you to click on anything or post this particular number, but it advises you to perhaps go into your into your account, and it gives you another security password or passcode. So I'm not sure about that, because I typically get texts, particularly after I've set up a standing order, for example, and they send you a text saying we've just set that. If this isn't you, then let us know. Which I think is quite good layers of security. So I'm not sure of that.
I'll take the last one from Dennis.
Yeah, this isn't a question, it's just an observation. The most stupid attempt to scam is I had a phone call from a young lady telling me that the council, of all people, owed me money on my council tax, going back to whatever time it was. And I said, oh, that's nice. Would you send me the money? And she said, oh no, we can't do that, you have to apply. So I said, why should I have to apply if you're telling me you've done it? And she said, oh well, we have to be sure. So I said, yes, so will I be, thank you, and I put the phone down. So I then rang the office, the council tax office, and they knew absolutely nothing about it. We've got nobody out on, phoning on these situations.
Yeah.
So they owed me a few thousand according to her, and I've never got it from the council.
No, we're not going to give any money back. That's quite a common trick. Your band D, band C, band whatever, has been reevaluated and you're owed £2,000. It's just a scam.
The last one, please.
I was just going, one of the ones that's going around quite a lot is for people who are buying properties where their details are hacked into at the solicitors. And they get an email saying, we've changed our bank accounts. You send your deposit to this account, this time you hold an account, they send the monies, and it's not a small amount of money, it can be obviously life-changing amounts of money, to use that term. And I think the was just left said, if you're in doubt about the authenticity of an email or text, however nice it looks, just get the number that you have, or like back of your credit card that has a number, call that, you know that that's their number, call that and you can always check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
That's okay.
And sharing with so many different kinds of scams that are going.
Okay.
And it's quite worrying because we are all over the age where we were there, 65 plus. I think even when we got most of the answers right, in the surroundings where we are, and our thoughts are focused on scamming. But when you are on your own, outside or at your home or at your business, these thoughts, your thoughts will be going all everywhere else but scamming. And to answer those questions would be very difficult, I think.
Yeah.
So it's quite worrying, frightening, and I don't know what we can do.
Yeah.
Can I go mobile?
Oh right, yeah.
No, thank you very much for
That's all right.
fellows. Fellows, I remind you of any other business first, any other business. No, I remind you of the apologies book, menu and the website. Please be upstanding for the final.